In the 1990s, liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, was going to revolutionise motoring. A fuel that almost all cars could run on, but cost half as much as petrol. At its peak, there were 170,000 cars running on LPG in Britain and 10 million in Europe. Up until 2005, the UK government even offered grants towards the cost of converting your car to run on LPG.
Station, please, Chief. In some places, though, LPG is still big news. Take Tokyo, for example, where 90% of taxis, like this exquisite Nissan Cedric, run on the stuff. Compared to petrol, LPG produces 10% less carbon dioxide, 85% less carbon monoxide, and smaller quantities of all the other exhaust grot. Today, though, we're not in Tokyo, we're in Rutland, at one of the 1,400 LPG filling stations in Britain.
With hybrid and electric power now the green fuel of choice, LPG has dropped off the radar for many motorists. I'm going to reveal whether now is the time for us to start using LPG again, ending with an explosive test into its safety. The fuel itself is a byproduct of two processes, the refinement of petrol from crude oil and the extraction of natural gas. Once compressed lightly, as it is in a car's tank, it becomes a liquid. There are 20,000 LPG stations in Europe, and the fuel companies say they're here to stay. Time for a test drive of an iconic LPG car, this Nissan Cedric Tokyo Taxi.
I'm now charging nobody 650 yen to get somewhere. On this show, I get to drive an awful lot of interesting vehicles, but this just takes the biscuit. This is the best car I have ever driven. I've even got interesting things like a button here which opens that back door via compressed air, so I can let passengers in and out without opening the door for them manually. It's like Japanese James Bond, but with Draylon and doilies. Fitting LPG in your car will cost about £1,500, and it'll involve putting a new second tank into the car somewhere for fuel. You'll also have to have some of the plumbing changed under the bonnet for your injection system, and also your ignition system tweaked. Now, once done, you'll actually see your fuel economy drop by up to 15%. However, that is where the bad news ends.
Thanks to lower tax rates than petrol, LPG costs about 75p a litre, while petrol costs about £1.40. So while you do use a bit more of it, the lower price means your fuel bill should drop by about 40%. So far, so good.
Let's not forget the other two things. A, LPG cars burn much cleaner at the exhaust. And B, that means it qualifies for a slightly cheaper car tax.
The best value way to buying your own LPG car is on the second-hand market. You avoid having to pay the conversion cost yourself, and as many buyers are wary of LPG cars, prices can start from as little as £1,000.
Here's an extreme example of the kind of LPG cars that you can get. This is a Renault Sport Megane 225. Proof that LPG cars aren't just boring commuter fodder. But before you grab the classifieds and dive in, consider this. Some LPG cars were converted a long time ago. Some might have been done on the cheap, and some might not have been maintained properly. So here's a few things to consider first.
Check out the car's paperwork.
Now, as ludicrous as it sounds, unlike, say, your household central heating system, an LPG conversion doesn't have to have been fitted by a professional or checked by a professional. However, a credible installation will have been entered on the UK LPG database. So to check whether your potential purchase is up to safety standards, it's very easy and it's free. All you've got to do is look for one of these certificates, or even easier, go on the website and type in the registration number of the car. As every model of car is different, so will be the LPG installation. But what you're essentially looking for is a car that's been sympathetically converted, like this. What you're not looking for is a car that's had its bodywork rudely hacked about so as to encourage stuff like rust. Finally, I'm keen to address the issues of safety. Thanks to a couple of DIY disasters and a couple of backstreet garage cowboy conversions, there have been some scare stories about LPG leaks and explosions. But the bottom line is an LPG car really more dangerous than a normal car with a tank full of petrol?
It's time to find out. This car has been rigged to replicate a car with a leaking LPG system. Right now, its cabin is being filled with propane gas, exactly as it would do if you had a faulty valve on your tank. One news story I've seen reports on how a leaky LPG system exploded when its driver sparked up a cigarette.
This button here represents that cigarette lighter. Let's spark one up. Crikey.
The gas flashes over and disappears almost instantly. This is what we'd expect in an actual LPG-equipped car, because when it's in a compressed liquid state in the tank, LPG isn't actually that flammable.
So, purely for scientific reasons, and not at all because I'm aroused by pyromania, we are rigging the same car for a similar scenario involving petrol. In other words, a leaking fuel system ignited by a spark.
Again, I'm in control.
Crikey, Mike! The whole back of the car's gone. OK, that was 2 litres of petrol. It felt like 270 litres. Stoner crows.
The petrol explodes far more violently than the LPG, and instead of flashing over, it just keeps burning.
I got some eyes full of headlining and plastic trim.
The important thing to remember here is that LPG is no more or less dangerous than petrol.
You definitely will have hurt yourself in both cars.
To safeguard against something like this happening, every LPG tank is made from 10mm thick steel. In the event of a severe impact, they will deform, not rupture.
The alloys still look good.
So does LPG represent a real alternative to punishing your wallet every time you fill up with petrol? Well, it will cut your fuel bills, it's cleaner than petrol, and used LPG cars are bargains. If you're still not convinced, then ask yourself this question: can thousands of Tokyo taxi drivers really be wrong?
The Capri gets you back in touch with the basics of how cars handle. And don't just take my word for it. Throughout his career as an F1 driver, the car that Tiff had sitting outside his home was a Ford Capri. Even Plato ranked...
Now this is an old school hot hatch. Raucous, noisy, quick. It's bringing back memories, you know, I used to have...